So today we are going to be looking at medical interpreter ethics. So that's our topic for today. Medical interpreter ethics. Okay. That's what we're dealing with today.
Okay.
That's what we're on today.
No problem.
So, quick question. How have you how do you find the class site? Is it easy to use? Is the information okay? I'm going to reorganize some of the information, there. But how is it so far?
You talking about the classroom setting?
The classroom, the site, the classroom where the assignments are, where I post the assignments.
Yeah, everything is fine with it. I don't have a problem with it. I like it.
Okay. All right.
It's easy to use.
Okay. Okay. There's okay. Let me share my screen.
For me also, everything is okay.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, let's okay. So today we'll be looking at medical interpreter ethics. Okay, medical interpreter ethics. Let's see. Nadia says she can join. She can join. Use the same link as before. Okay, let me share the link to the class with Nadia. Okay, all right, so let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, can you make it bigger, please?
Is it okay now?
A little bigger. A little bigger, please. All right.
Okay. So this week today we're looking at medical interpreter codes of ethics. There are different codes, okay? So the point here is that interpreting is a complex task with many areas where mistakes can be made. And the best way to avoid mistakes is to know about them and to learn the situations. And we'll be talking about some of them. So the code of ethics exists to help interpreters Okay, hi Nadia.
Hi, Dr. Imina. Comment ça va?
Ça va, ça va. How was it in Canada?
Good. So it was snowing for 2 days.
Where were you? Where were in what part of Canada? Sorry? Okay.
Anjou, Montréal.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay. So codes of ethics help interpreters make decisions in difficult situations, and they are guidelines that show you how to perform your work in the most effective way possible. Okay. Now ethics are not morals. Okay. Because it is easy to confuse things. An interpreter should do professionally with the things an interpreter might inherently think are right and wrong. Okay. So ethics are not morals. Okay. Ethics are standards of conduct agreed upon by a profession. That's what an ethic is. So lawyers have ethics, doctors have ethics, medical interpreters as well have ethics. Hi, Matan.
Hello, Dr. Imina. How are you? Sorry, I'm late. I was trying to log in. I couldn't.
That's fine. You're welcome. I don't think you've met everyone, so we have. Let's just make quick introductions. You can tell us where you are originally from in Haiti and where you live now. Gio, let's start with you.
Hello, hi. Hello, everybody.
Go ahead.
Well, my name is Jules, and I'm actually living in the capital in Port-au-Prince right now, particularly in Canapé.
Okay. Great. Go ahead, Matan.
Oh, hello, everybody. My name is Marthan, and I am from Haiti, and I live in Boston, in Massachusetts right now.
Okay. Enoch?
Hello, I am Jean-Enoch Farouk.
You should be on video, Enoch, except you're in a place where you can't go on video. You should be on video.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hello, I am Jean-Enoch Farouk. I'm from Haiti, and I'm living in Haiti now. I say welcome to Mrs. Mara.
Where in Haiti are you? Where in Haiti?
In Taba.
Okay.
The area is called Taba.
Okay.
Close to the airport.
Okay.
Nice meeting you all.
Okay. Nadia, if your sound wasn't good, if you can, can you unmute and just tell us about yourself?
My name is Nadia Mondesir. I'm living in Fairfield, Connecticut. So I'm so glad to be here with you.
What area are you from?
I'm from Haiti.
Where?
Cap Haïtien.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. And
Where's in Latibonite?
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm from Latibonite also.
Okay.
Verret.
Oh, même c'est La Chapelle.
Oh, nice meeting you, Nadia. Nice meeting everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get that correct. Ethics are not morals. Okay? Ethics are not morals. okay, there are standards agreed upon by a profession. So a person's understanding of what is appropriate and inappropriate may guide that person in making right personal decisions. However, professional ethical rules are to be followed by all professionals. So it's not a question of what you think is right or wrong. It's a question of what your code of ethics says is right or wrong. Okay. So like we say, the same we say about lawyers. We say that they have a lot of ethics, but very few morals. Yeah, we say that. So it's not about your morals, it's about ethics.
Okay.
Okay, so you follow ethics, you don't follow your morals. Okay. So interpreter ethics are simply the broad rules that help interpreters know what is appropriate and what is inappropriate when interpreting. These ethics are shared by the whole interpreting profession, and they're independent from individual interpreters' beliefs. Instead of relying on individual beliefs and preferences of what is acceptable, okay, which is a varying standard based on opinion, a code of ethics provides a list of standards that interpreters should hold themselves and each other accountable to. Okay. So one, ethics are not morals.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I can't read the text. It's not readable for me.
Well, I can send this. I can share this. I can share this with you.
Maybe the letters are to.
Are you using your phone or your computer?
The computer.
Oh.
But I think that maybe the letters are too big.
Letters are too big?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we?
No, it's good now. It's good now. Thank you.
Okay.
It's okay now.
No, when I move the screen, it may be difficult to see for a while.
Okay.
So the thing, ethics are mandatory. Okay, you must. So ethics exist to help interpreters make decisions when faced with a difficult ethical situation. A code of ethics is not a definitive how to solve all difficult dilemmas faced by an interpreter, but rather a set of rules to follow and to use as a guideline to avoid behaving in a way that would harm the interpreter, the provider, the patient, or the profession. Okay. So ethics are not mere suggestions, they are mandatory principles that all interpreters should follow to maintain trust. I'm going to mute everyone, and you can unmute yourself when you want to speak, okay? To reduce background noise. Okay. Ethics are not mere suggestions. They are mandatory principles that all interpreters should follow to maintain trust for the interpreting profession and to help providers and patients. Certified medical or healthcare interpreters, for instance, may lose their national certification credentials due to breaches in code of ethics. So always remember, the basic purpose of the interpreter is to mediate communication between the patient and provider. By interpreting everything that is said accurately and completely, as well as problem solving and intervening when necessary to ensure accurate communication. So remember the roles of the interpreter: to act as a conduit, to act as a clarifier, to act as a cultural bridge, and to be an advocate. Remember the 4 roles of the interpreter. Okay. But interpreter mostly acts as a conduit. Okay. So the most well-known codes of ethics for medical interpreters are these 3. Okay, and these are, let's look at them. Copy link. let's put it here. So this is the Code of Ethics, the NCIHC Code of Ethics. Okay, there are 9 of them. Okay, so it is here. That's when I did that, and it comes up with this. Okay, so let me close out some of this. Okay, let me close all of these things and leave just. Okay, so this is the NCIHC. Okay, that's from here. Okay, and then this is the IMIA Code of Ethics. Copy link. So this is the IMIA Code of Ethics. Okay, and this is the copy link, and this is the CHIA. It's called the California Healthcare Interpreters Association. This is their own code of ethics. Okay, so these are their code of ethics, and you can see their principle 1, confidentiality, impartiality, accuracy, cultural responsiveness. So these are their 3 codes of ethics, and they are these ones here. Okay, so when you get this document, you can look at their code of ethics. So we say that they are generally we mostly look at the NCIHC Code of Ethics. All right, so it's called the National Council on Interpreting in Healthcare Code of Ethics, NCIHC, and there are basically 9 principles in the code. Okay, there's confidentiality, accuracy, impartiality, cultural sensitivity, professionalism, respect, professional development, and advocacy. All right? So 9 principles. Okay? Confidentiality means to maintain confidentiality of patient information. Accuracy is interpreting accurately and completely. Impartiality, remain neutral and objective. Cultural sensitivity, respecting cultural differences and avoiding bias. Professionalism, adhering to professional standards of conduct. Okay. All right. So this is the NCIHC Code of Ethics. Okay. To guide the conduct of medical interpreters. The principle is fundamental to ensuring quality and ethical interpreting services. So the core principles, like we said, the first one was confidentiality. Okay. What does confidentiality mean? It means protecting the privacy of patient information. It means that you must adhere to something we call HIPAA regulations, and maintain confidentiality in all settings, including during and after the interpreting encounter. This includes refraining from discussing patient information with anyone outside the healthcare team. Interpreters must be mindful of the physical space they are in and avoid any discussions where unauthorized people could overhear. Okay? So this is confidentiality. All right? So, the interpreter treats as confidential within the treating team all information learned in the performance of their professional duties while observing relevant requirements regarding disclosure. So how do you apply this principle? Okay. Avoid discussing details of any patient information that you learn. Now, there are circumstances under which you can break confidentiality. Okay. If you are required by law for imminent danger, if you suspect child or vulnerable adult abuse, okay, all right. But note that domestic violence, let me use another is not considered imminent danger. Okay? Unless the victim's life is in danger. So usually you would not report it. If you do, that could be an example of advocacy. So, all right. So domestic violence is not considered imminent danger. It's not considered imminent danger. Okay. So special considerations. Many patients and clients do not understand what confidentiality means. They might think private means secret. And they might not understand that confidential information can be shared with certain other staff, like the treatment team at the hospital. Like a patient may tell you, what I'm sampral di kunya padi doctor. You know, you can't do that. Okay, you have to deduct it. So remember, we said that in your introduction, you tell the patient, oh, which reminds me, we are all supposed to do our introduction today, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
moi genyen yon ti motion. Si patient di ou, alors client di ou, sa mbral djou la pi go di docteur. Leur di docteur, la perdu confiance. So pensez.
Oui, mais avant, so, l'elle dit ça, ou même, ou a dit que régulation et code of ethics, okay? You know, interpreter code of ethics requires you to divulge anything, you know, the patient, you know, any communication, so et puis on va avec you que si vous parlez du docteur, puis ou pas qu'à dire, parce que tout ça dit forme du docteur. Okay, so once you've already told the patient that you will have to repeat everything that they say. So in other words, if you are in an in-person appointment and you go to the appointment and you are sitting outside in the waiting room with a patient, and they come over to you and say, you know, they say. So anyway, you have to tell the patient, because even what they tell you in the waiting room, it is part of what you have to tell the doctor. So two things. One, don't sit with the patient to avoid that situation. Or if they start telling you, you have to tell them to stop. Because whatever they tell you, you have to tell the doctor. Okay? Or you tell them, if they have a question, they should hold. If they ask you a question, you tell them, no. Hold on. Save the question. And when we are with the doctor, you can ask the question. Okay? So as an interpreter, you don't offer any information. If they say, please, where is the way to the my next appointment? It's not your business to show them the way to the next appointment. Okay, you take them to the reception staff and offer to interpret for them. Okay. So remember that part of your introduction says that I will interpret everything and everything will remain confidential. Okay. And again, like I said, you clarify the meaning of confidentiality for the patient if necessary. Some patients might be afraid to open up unless they know you will not share what you interpret with your family and people from the patient's community, others. So that's why the patient needs to be reassured that everything said here will remain confidential. Okay. Without trust about confidentiality, providers cannot really provide a service effectively. Okay, so that's confidentiality. All right, so remember, the first one is confidentiality, the next one is accuracy. Okay, accuracy. So accuracy, the interpreter strives to render the message correctly, conveying the content and spirit of the original message, taking into consideration its cultural context. Remember, we also talked about the tone, register, style. So you have to communicate the tone, the register, and the style. So how to apply this principle? Accuracy requires completeness. Accuracy means interpret everything, even the bad words, okay? Even the side conversations. You might have to summarize such conversations, for example, between two. So in this case, what this means is that if the provider is talking to the patient's family, right? The patient's family speaks English. The patient doesn't. So while they are talking, you have to be interpreting to the patient. Okay? And you may have to summarize, but and the reason why you're having to summarize is because if two service providers are talking or talking with several family members, okay, and if there's information you didn't catch, you ask for a repetition, okay. If there even long answers that seem irrelevant and go on and on, you still have to interpret them. Okay, so let me move this.
Excuse me, Dr. Imina, I'm going to try to log into my computer because I was on my phone.
Okay.
So if you see, you'll probably see Malachi Francois on it. So
okay.
Let's see.
So, so what we're saying here is accuracy. So it means everything. Everything means bad words, curse words, swear words, offensive language. You interpret everything, and there's no accuracy without transparency. So what is transparency? What does this word transparency mean? Okay. Transparency means interpret everything stated during the session. Okay. What this means is that if you have to stop to ask for clarification, you have to say, this is the interpreter speaking. Could you let me know what you meant by this? Right? So that it is clear that it is not the patient it's not the patient asking the question, it is you. So transparency means making sure that everybody in the room everybody understands when it is you speaking and not the patient or the provider. Okay. So when, as the interpreter, you ask for clarification, tell the other person that you asked for clarification before going back to interpreting. Okay. It is essential and it requires conscious commitment. So failure to interpret curse words and other objectionable utterances undermines transparency. Omitting anything that makes you too uncomfortable to interpret destroys accuracy as well as transparency. And lack of transparency is often noticed. It generates countless complaints. It leads to side conversation. Lack of transparency can lead to mistrust of interpreters.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the offensive words, some people, due to religious reasons, they might have like a problem with that. They might feel like because of their belief system or what they believe in, like they cannot interpret like offensive words. So what do you say about that?
They should go and be ministers of the gospel and not interpreters.
Not for me, Dr. Imina.
Sorry?
So that means this is not for me.
Well,
that's the tough part. That's the hard part about it.
Remember. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Now that you brought that up, sorry, give me a second.
Yeah.
Second. Second here. All right, let's take a look at this. When the Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk, and they sent to him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God in truth. Nor do you care about anyone, for you do not regard the person of men. Tell us, therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, "Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money." So they brought him a denarius, and he said to them, "Whose image and inscription is this?" They said to him, "Caesar's." And he said to them, "Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So we say that to say, when you're interpreting, you follow the code of
ethics.
Ethics. When you're preaching, you follow the code of the Bible.
Okay.
Right? Man Francois. Where gen le opada ko
Well, I mean, I find it a little, how would I say, if you never use foul language and then you have to say it the way it is, I mean, and as a pastor, I don't think, I mean, in a court or in the hospital and then, interpreting something with a foul language, you see what I'm saying? Because I can't be preaching.
Well,
Imagine one of my, of my followers is in the place that I'm, you see what I'm saying? It's, I think.
Yeah. But the important thing is actually, I think it's important for you as a minister to teach your congregation this. Faithfulness. Because as an interpreter, you are faithfully representing the patient. It is not your words. All right? It is not your words. You are faithfully, so it's a lesson, it's a teaching, it's an opportunity to teach the congregation about faithfulness. And as an interpreter, it is your job to faithfully represent the patient. Remember, the patient is at a disadvantage. If you do not say what the patient says, you have disenfranchised them. You've taken their voice away. Right? And who knows, it says that it is out of the abundance of the heart that the mouth speaks, right? Right? So whether they say it out or not is there. But when they actually say it out, it now shows what is in their heart and gives an opportunity for it to be corrected. So as an interpreter, it is your role to faithfully represent the voice, of the speaker. Okay. So the interpreter, yes. Okay, we're here. So let me see if I can see some, let's see if we can see some material that we can look at. Let me stop here and see if I can find something. Quick review.
Connecting cultures here in Rosales. We wanted to continue some conversations with you. Not often that we're able to get together and just kind of hash things out and talk.
There's no image.
I think
The video is not. We can't see the video.
It's a lot of years.
We can't see the video.
And we just wanted to share some more. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about the code of ethics, but not in the way that you're probably expecting.
Yeah, so the code of ethics, has the breakdown of all the different tenets, and so there will be time and space to talk about, the different tenets that are, canons, whatever you like to call them, what from confidentiality, impartiality, role boundaries, all that good stuff. But what we want to talk about is just kind of the general concept of the code of ethics, how it fits into our professional experience and our professional role.
Right. So there seems to be a school of thought out there that the code of ethics for healthcare interpreters is a baseline, and that once you have gained experience, then you go beyond your baseline and you start taking on new roles and adding, because at that point the critical thinking skills and the experience allows you to then maybe add value, be more helpful. I have a thing with the word helpful. Yeah. But it's kind of a launching point. And we don't think that's different for us. And so we thought it was important to share our different thoughts with you.
So when we're thinking about, the code of ethics, a lot of times as interpreters, we get just inundated and immersed in the code of ethics during our initial training period and program. And so there can, a takeaway from that might be, well, the code of ethics is for me to kind of get my bearings and kind of have a sense of where I should be starting out when I'm practicing as an interpreter, as a professional interpreter. And while there's certainly truth in that, the code of ethics doesn't go away. And so one of the things that is important for us to keep in mind is that regardless of if it's our first appointment or our 1 millionth appointment, right, we use the code of ethics to guide every decision, every approach to a situation or scenario, and we make sure that what we're doing is rooted in and fits in that code of ethics.
Right.
So what we're experiencing as far as the code of ethics is, that very first appointment, there's going to be a kind of a narrow view just by default of I don't have a whole lot of background or experiences to pull off of and how I'm applying and using the code of ethics. But it's important that we keep in mind that no matter how tenured we are, whatever our decisions are, however we're approaching a situation, as we're using the critical thinking processes, that it's always from the frame point of what is expected of us as professionals based on what the code of ethics says, based on what the standards of practice says. And so one of the potential dangers as you move further away from your initial training program is you don't revisit the code of ethics, and so you think, I've got it, I know what I'm doing, I'm following the code of ethics, and you keep on kind of doing your own thing, and without realizing it, your own thing, which started out maybe and hopefully pretty locked into the code of ethics and professional practice, then starts deviating. Yeah. And so all of a sudden you've kind of become apart from the code of ethics. Sometimes, there are challenging decisions that interpreters need to make.
Absolutely.
And there are times when there's truly an ethical dilemma where this tenet kind of bumps up against this tenet, and so which one do I go with, or how do I frame my decision? And reasonable people can come up with different responses. I should rephrase that. Reasonable, critical thinking people, professional people can come up with different ways to respond to or approach the same or similar situation. And even though they're different responses to a same or similar situation, they can both be compliant with or adhering to upholding the standards of professional practice for interpreters. And so as we get more not only experience, the time and whatnot is an important component, but the greater critical thinking, the more expertise that we have as interpreters in the field, the better we are at working within the framework of the code of ethics, but in a more complex way, in a more complex scenario.
Right.
So that's the thing to always keep in mind is that it's never, well, I used the code of ethics when I started out, but now that I got that figured out, I'm able to see where I can do things outside of or beyond the scope of the code of ethics. It's not a starting point, it's there with us for the duration of our career.
Right. And so there's a couple of things that pop into my mind when we're talking about this. One is experience. So what qualifies us in that frame of mind when we start to go beyond the code of ethics? Is it 50 appointments? Is it 75? Is it having the initial training? Is it being certified? Is it how many areas you've worked in? Really, what would even qualify as having enough experience to use code of ethics as a springboard into other things? And so when we look at that frame of mind, also, we work, all of our staff here are full-time. So we work only in healthcare 24/7. And so after I just had this experience with a lot of our team, and it was really fun. We have our initial training, and you're introduced to code of ethics, and it kind of is all there. But then over time, you're in the field, and you get to know, especially in environments where you're working a lot. So you get to know the patients, you get to know the providers, you get to know everybody by name. And so it seems as though you're integrating and you're part of their team. But what happens is when you step outside of your role, you're really damaging our reputation in healthcare, because you don't see registrars or people who register you taking blood pressure. You don't see physicians coming out to do a follow-up appointment. You don't see nurses diagnosing. You don't see administrators coming and greeting. Everything in healthcare has a role, and we've talked about our business experience, like the business model, right? There's legalities, there's liabilities, there's all sorts of reasons to really, as an interpreter, use those code of ethics and standards of practice as your guidelines, as your boundary when you're working.
And really your scope of practice. So if it's important that we take a look at the code of ethics in its whole. And like I said, we're not getting into the nitty-gritties of what each thing says for this particular talk, but when we are applying the code of ethics, we need to look at it as the whole scope. Mm-hmm. And so we can take a look at a scenario and think, okay, this is where conveying cultural frameworks, if we're thinking about, that terminology, is something that it applies in this scenario, or this is where impartiality might apply in another situation. So we're really thinking about looking at the whole scope of all of them intertwining together.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I think happens over time and kind of starts to have scope creep, if you will, and outside of the code of ethics, is that you get connected to people. And so I think that's where the kind of the discussions we've been having about provider versus patient and who the customer is, right? We see patients as people who need more help. We want to guide them. We want to make sure that everything's okay. And so ultimately, I think it's very easy to fall into the mindset or the feeling of, okay, I need to take care of this person because they need my help, because linguistically, they really do. However, when you start to do things for other people, you're really taking away their right, and it is a right, to be an adult. Because if we weren't in the room and everybody spoke the language, all of this help would happen. You have organizations that are designed to give rides, that are designed to offer services, that are designed to provide all sorts of resources that our community has. And so by looking at the code of ethics as that launching point and at that kind of baseline and going beyond that, you're taking away a physician's right and responsibility to offer those resources. So when we follow the code of ethics and we do our job, all of that comes out. And as Erin said, I could go on and on in the tenets of all the different ways that we do that. But within the code of ethics, those are our professional boundaries. When we look at ourselves as a professional in the healthcare system, and I'm sure in others as well that have those boundaries, that's our space. And that's where we add value. That's where healthcare organizations start to think, oh my goodness, like this is a service and a resource that really helps me. But when there's scope creep and we start to go outside of that definition and those boundaries, that's when things get muddy. And that's when it starts to be difficult to really define. Even the previous video that we did talking about, you know, the business argument and stuff, when you muddy the waters of your role as a healthcare interpreter, now you're making it real difficult for people to be like, okay, healthcare interpreters do this, they help in this way. And so I think it's a really dangerous space to get into.
So really on that dangerous space too, we have that responsibility in thinking not only about who are the people who are infected in this immediate encounter and the decisions that I'm making as the interpreter, but what am I telling people about what to expect from any professional interpreter? So if I am scope creeping, if I'm doing something that really is more appropriate for a social worker or a chaplain or a nurse or somebody else to be doing, I'm probably the only one in the room who knows that.
Right.
Everyone else in the room, the patients, providers, family members, are maybe thinking, oh, that's just what healthcare interpreters do. Yeah. So when an interpreter colleague of mine, who I've probably never met, comes into that, a follow-up appointment for the same people, the same scenario, and now it's different with that interpreter, I've kind of set that other interpreter up to well, not necessarily for failure, but at least for some confusion, or to have to trailblaze or have to reteach, how to interact or what to expect with an interpreter.
Right.
So we really need to think about, part of the reason why I am adhering to the Code of Ethics is because it's not just about me, it's about my entire profession and what I'm showing people about what to expect.
Right, and that's how we bring the new generation in. That's how we bring, as practicing interpreters, people want to come into our field, but it makes it really difficult for them to do when everybody's doing it differently. And so that's really important to pay attention to. And then finally, one of the things that caught me when we started talking about this topic, as it being kind of a springboard and a baseline, is there's been so much work that the pioneers of this industry have put into place to create the Code of Ethics, the time, the hours, all volunteer, but the work that's been done to then say, well, maybe it's something else. We can kind of continue on a different way, or it's just a thought to start things rolling, I think really is just almost disrespectful in some regard, because it has been so developed for professionals to define the healthcare interpreter as a professional. So I think it's really important as well as we move forward in our profession and as time goes on and decades pass, that we pay attention to what has been, and we pay attention to the work and the energy and the effort and the resources and the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone on and has been put into this over so much time, because it was no man's land, and it's still we're still developing, but we're so lucky and we're so fortunate, especially getting in now and future times, that work has been established. So when people are new into the industry and, well, how do I do things, or what's my guide, or what can I do, those Code of Ethics are it. And I'm just going to pop this in because I think I tend to tangent and run around, but one of the things that I think is really important is when we have our team come in who are doing healthcare 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week or more, and they come in with a question, all of their situations are answered within the boundaries of the Code of Ethics. Everything can be answered, and it makes their job so much easier when that's the guide, because it seems, again, you're introduced and you start to point out like, oh, well, that's this area or that's this area, and if here's why it works this way, it really, really makes the job so much easier. It helps us to avoid burnout and to take care of ourselves so that we can go home to our families, and it really helps in those, we have our everyday encounters that are, oh, okay, it's a physical or, rehab or something like that, and not that it's lessened, but healthcare is birth to death and everything in between. And when you can follow the Code of Ethics as your guide, as your boundary, as your role, everything, whether you've just started or you've been doing it for decades, everything makes sense. And so for us, you know, the code of ethics doesn't go away in your responsibilities and in your profession ever. And we need to understand our role as healthcare interpreters so that we can support other people's role within the healthcare profession as well.
Yep, and as healthcare interpreters, there's a broad view as to what we can do ethically and within our scope. So it's really not limiting, it's kind of liberating, really, right. Because it, a couple of thoughts that come to mind for me and things that I'll share with especially new interpreters coming in and when thinking about, you know, the code of ethics is, it's really nice when the code of ethics aligns with the way that I think, right? But it is reassuring to know that I'm not doing this because I, Aaron Rosales, think it's the right thing to do. I'm doing this because this is what the profession says that I ought to do or I have to do, which kind of leads to the other way that I view the code of ethics and standards of practice, and that's that the code of ethics kind of does two things. One, it's my best friend keeping me out of hot water, right? Preventing me from trying to be that social worker, trying to be that problem solver, trying to be something that I'm really not skilled or capable to do. But it's also my mother looking over my shoulder, making sure I'm doing a good job. Right. So I'm not slacking off, or I'm not kind of cutting corners, and I'm like, I was close enough to accurate, you know. So it does that both and for us, and that's true from day one, and day 800, 900. 200, I don't know math, a really big number day of working within the profession.
Right. So as you can see, code of ethics is a pretty big deal for us. So as you're wondering, you know, what do I do? How do I develop? Where do I go? Whether it's, you know, day 1 or year 25, continuing to look at the code of ethics and take your situations that you've been in and that you work in, and even the tough ones, because those are the ones that they're not cut and dry, and bring them back and figure out, okay, this was the situation, how do I apply the code of ethics to this? And like Erin said, it just reassures, it relaxes, talk with your colleagues, with your colleagues, because we're, you know.
Manager, if you can.
Manager, somebody.
Managers don't always understand the role of interpreters.
Right. But that's really the guiding force for our profession. And if we're going to keep moving it forward, we're going to keep building it up. We're going to keep it sustainable. Code of ethics that's the definition of healthcare interpreting. Yeah. So
keep it close to your heart and to your practice, and a sincere shout out to all the folks, as Rochelle mentioned, those pioneers who did all of the work to make it possible for us to have standards of practice and code of ethics that guide the work that we do day in and day out.
Absolutely. So thanks guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and
okay. So that is the importance of, let's go back. Where is my material? Okay. So we've just talked about 2 of the codes, accuracy and confidentiality. Okay. Then there is impartiality. Impartiality, so we said that there are 9 codes. Let's call them again. Confidentiality, accuracy, impartiality, cultural sensitivity, professionalism, respect, professional development, advocacy. 9. All right, so now we've talked about confidentiality and accuracy. Now let's talk about impartiality. Interpreters must remain neutral and objective throughout the interpreting process. This means avoiding personal opinions, judgments, or biases that could influence the interpretation. Okay. Interpreters should not take sides or advocate for a particular outcome outside of advocating for clear and accurate communication. If an interpreter has a conflict of interest, they should recuse themselves from the interpreting session. So, for example, if you get to an interpreting session, you find a member, members of your church, You can interpret for them. Okay, or you find your younger sister's ex-husband. You can interpret for them. Okay. Or the neighbor that lives above you upstairs. Can interpret for them. In that case, you know, that might not be a definite no-no. Okay. If you disclose what your relationship is, or I know this person, and they might be comfortable with you interpreting for them. Okay. They might be. But member of your church, because member of your church is not going to talk about their, you know, extramarital relationship, which is the reason why they have, you know, they have chlamydia, for example. So it's a no-no. Okay. Okay, so that's impartiality.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Professor. So when you go to the site and you see someone, like you say, the neighbor, family member of the church, so you just say that no, I cannot do that, or how?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. I know this patient. You know, you can talk about what the nature of your relationship is. So, the code of ethics will not allow me interpret. And it's not I don't want to. It's the code of ethics will not allow me.
Okay.
And you cannot be forced to go against your code of ethics, because as a professional, you are bound by a code of ethics. Okay. So the next one, so we've talked about impartiality. The next one is cultural sensitivity. Interpreters must be knowledgeable about and respectful of diverse cultural values, beliefs, and communication styles. This involves being aware of potential cultural differences that may affect communication and adapting interpreting strategies accordingly. Now, this might not be such a big issue in Haiti, because kind of like one, you know, kind of like one culture, kind of. But if you interpret for Spanish, for example, you know, there are many countries with different cultures. You know, Portuguese, for example, French. Okay. You know, the way you would interpret, you know, the culture of a Parisian is, you know, is different from, you know, the grandmother from Côte d'Ivoire, for example. All right. So you should use culturally appropriate language and terminology. You know, you should be aware of and avoid any action or language that could be seen as culturally insensitive. Okay. Then the next one is professionalism. Okay, professionalism. Interpreter must maintain a professional demeanor and conduct themselves ethically in all situations. Includes punctuality, preparedness, appropriate attire, adherence to professional boundaries. So punctuality, usually they say for if you're going to a location, you know, if you're told to go to a location, generally punctuality means arrive 15 minutes before they start. You should engage in continuous professional development to maintain competence and stay updated on best practices. Should maintain respectful communication with all parties. And you should acknowledge your limitations. Okay. Acknowledge your limitations.
Doctor, when you say limitations, are you referring back to what you said earlier as, let's say if it's a family member,
No,
a church member?
no. It means that if you have not been certified for French, don't offer yourself as a French interpreter.
Okay.
Yeah. If you don't know legal terminology, don't offer yourself as a legal interpreter. Okay, so 7 here is respect. So we already mentioned respect here, but we'll expand it here, respect. So maintain impartiality and neutrality, avoiding, treat all patients with dignity, respect the patient's right to make their own informed decisions. Okay, remember what that lady was saying. If the patient says, oh, please, where do I get fine transportation? They are adults. You are removing from them that right of being an adult. If you keep holding their hands, like some patients who say, some old patients say they're afraid of the elevator. Tell them, dégage you. Because I mean, because I know that they're not going to be hurt in the elevator, right? So get in the elevator, pese, ou numéro a, eli pou pese. And then I'm not going to get in the elevator and ride with them because I'm taking away that's disrespectful. I'm not respecting them as adults. Okay, so and then respect the patient's right to make their own informed decisions. Don't try to advise them. Okay, never speak down to a patient, and don't allow yourself to be disrespected either. Okay, respect confidentiality. Okay, respect for your professional boundaries. Okay. Maintain clear professional boundaries. Avoid personal relationship with patients. Refrain from offering medical advice or making medical decisions. Okay. Avoid any actions that could be perceived as inappropriate or exploitative. And then there's professional development. So keep developing as a professional. And then advocacy. Okay. Advocacy. So these are the 9 standards. And so you often in the video we watch, you hear them talk about when there's a diet. So the whole idea of professional ethical guidelines is to help you resolve ethical dilemmas. Okay. A dilemma is when 2 standards kind of conflict with each other. You're trying to decide, what do I do? Okay. Like things such as conflict of interest, pressure from patients or healthcare providers, patients asking you, s'il vous plaît, qui ça vous pensez? Or the provider saying, giving you a paper, please just explain this to the patient. Right? Or dealing with sensitive or emotionally charged situations. Addressing cultural differences. So we're going to look at some case studies. I'll illustrate medical dilemmas in medical interpreting, and then discuss some strategies. So, for example, conflict of interest, situations where an interpreter's personal interest could compromise their professional judgment or impartiality. For example, interpreting for family, friends, or individuals with whom you have a business relationship. Okay. Other types of processing include pressure from patients or providers, situations where you may face pressures to provide advice or opinion, omit or add information, violate confidentiality. These are all, issues that you might be confronted with. Okay. So we'll look at some strategies for handling such pressures while maintaining ethical integrity. And then other issues that come up that can be difficult when you're dealing with sensitive or emotionally charged situations. Okay. For example, end-of-life care, trauma, mental health crisis, abuse or domestic violence. Okay. So in these situations, you want to maintain your composure and professionalism. You convey emotions accurately while avoiding personal involvement. So if the patient says, yeah, you just, so if the patient's voice is sad, you also, like, doctor, ça te fait mal en pile, ça te fait mal en pile. So you say, doctor, that really hurt me so much. That really hurt me so much. So you are the patient's voice, right? So the situation, for example, if for example, we will talk about this in the area of self-care, and it's part of professionalism. So if, for example, you have been a victim of a violent, violence, right? And you're in a situation where a patient comes who has that same violence, there's a chance that you could be triggered. Okay, so you can decline that. You can explain to the provider that I've been a victim of this kind of violence, and interpreting this situation might trigger me personally. So you can do that. It's part of professionalism.
Doctor, would you be able to pull out from in the middle of
yes, yes,
session?
yes. You can you say to the provider, interpreter would like to like the doctor's attention, like to step outside with it, and then you tell them, and then they will explain to the patient that interpreter is not able to continue. Either they reschedule the appointment, or they get, usually most places have telephonic, or they'll call somebody on the phone or video. Okay. So cultural sensitivity, address cultural differences, situations where identify potential cultural misunderstandings, provide culturally appropriate interpretation, okay, and things like this. So talked about end-of-life care, that's involving these discussions with prognosis, palliative care, hospice, and all that. Conveying difficult news and emotions accurately. So there are a lot of things. Okay. Yeah, preparing yourself mentally, physically. Anyway, you get these notes and go through them. Dealing with sensitive and potentially dangerous situations, maintaining confidentiality and patient safety, understanding legal and ethical obligations, prioritize safety, patient safety and confidentiality, follow established protocols, and things like that. maintain your boundaries, pay attention to the patient's tone of voice, convey it accurately in the target language. Nonverbal cues, observe and interpret nonverbal cues, facial expression, body language. Hello, Mari. Yeah. Non-verbal cues, observe and interpret non-verbal cues, facial expressions and things like that. Demonstrate empathy by understanding and acknowledge patient's emotions, but avoid expressing personal sympathy or become emotionally involved. So don't express, oh, so sorry you're going through this. No, you keep your professional distance. Even if the patient is saying how their children were killed and all that, you just interpret. You convey whatever emotion they're conveying, but you don't. I'm so sorry you're going through this. That's the provider to do all that, not you. Knowing when to seek support or debriefing. Debriefing means if you've gone through a difficult, experience, you may want to go and talk to somebody, a friend, like those people were saying. Talk to your manager, talk to a friend, things like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What if the patients gets really emotional and start crying and then they lean over you? What are we supposed to do in that situation? Are we allowed to like let them lean on us?
No.
But what if they do it without
No, you have to step back. You have to step back.
Wouldn't that be seen as rude?
No, it's professional. Ask them if they need a social worker. And then if that is something that should be handled by a social worker, not by you. Okay, so let's look at this scenario. A patient is accompanied by the adult child who's also bilingual. The child insists on answering questions for the patient, even when the patient is capable of responding. The child also has their own opinions and interpretations. So you have an ethical dilemma, impartiality. How do you maintain impartiality when a family member is trying to control the conversation? How do you ensure accurate interpretation when a family member is adding or omitting information? Patient autonomy. How do you make sure that how do you advocate for the patient's right to communicate directly with the provider? So these are the issues you are dealing with here. So you need your ethical, guidelines to.
So what?
So what do you do?
Well, yeah. What's the best way to like handle something like that? A family member who would be involved.
So what are your responsibilities in this situation? Okay. So let's see. How does the interpreter maintain impartiality when a family member is trying to control the conversation? So what is impartiality? Impartiality means you don't get you don't get. Let's go back to impartiality.
You're staying neutral. You're not taking sides. You're staying neutral.
Yeah, staying neutral, not taking sides. So well, how would you make sure that you stay neutral in this case? Maybe you have to I don't know, maybe you might have to tell the family member that actually it's the provider that will need to do this, to tell the family member that it's in this case it's mostly the provider that should do that. to tell that family member that thank you, but you know, by the regulations of the hospital, we have to use a professional interpreter. Okay.
But what if the provider doesn't do that?
You can advocate. You can advocate for the patient's right and tell the provider that you can tell the provider that the patient's family is leaving out information, and that you know, you can tell the provider patient's family is leaving out information, you know, or you can allow the family member to interpret, and whatever they leave out, you interpret it. You can say, in addition to that, the patient said so and so thing. You know.
In other words, that you interpreting for the patient and the family member.
Yeah. If you have to.
Okay.
So, so you can intervene respectfully and professionally. So you have to maintain your, you know, respectfully, you know, professionally. What strategies can be used to redirect the conversation back to the patient? So if the family member speaks, if the doctor asks a question and the family member answers, I guess you could say you could still interpret the information to the patient, you know, in spite of the family. But in this case, really, it might be impossible for you to do if the provider doesn't support you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think in some cases where, you know, the family member might be really controlling, so
yeah.
So might be really hard to maintain, you know, efficiently.
Yeah. So a patient expresses beliefs about the cause of their illness that are significantly different from the clinician's explanation. The patient's beliefs may influence their decision to accept or refuse the treatment. So we had a patient, young woman, young female, who had an ectopic pregnancy. And she refused to do anything about it. As a lady, no part can't get by concern, no rasmo. In other words, my family doesn't have things like that, so I don't believe I have it. And this was an ectopic pregnancy. You know that an ectopic pregnancy is a death sentence knocking at the door, right? Yeah, there's really not much you can do. You can just you can in this case you can ask her like a cultural coach to the provider to tell them, let them know that this is the patient's, this is the belief system. For example, l'homme qui ligue en gaz, il commence dans derrière cool. Et puis il quand descend dans G-pied, dans bord gauche. There's nothing like that. Yeah. Et puis là il frappe G-pied et puis il fait dégobier et puis gaz là. Oui, résude. You know that there's nothing like that, but it's a real belief. You know, again, gas cap machine or tooth common, right? So you can explain to the, provider that this is a, cultural, like a belief, this is a belief. So that's what in that case you act as a cultural coach to let the provider know these issues. Okay. Anyway.
Speaking of on cultural coaching, I had a little like problem with the establishing a real difference between a cultural coach and a cultural broker. I would think they were the same, but they're not.
No, they're not. No, they're not. A cultural coach, a cultural broker just gives perspective, right? And a cultural coach goes ahead to give the doctor tools with which they can navigate the patient's culture. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on from here. Let's see if I have another one we can quick review of, well, let's see. Let's try this one. What did we lose? Oh, Paul.
So thank you for watching this video about the NCIHC Code of Ethics. I'm going to be just going through these ethical principles as outlined by the National Council on Interpreting in Healthcare's Code of Ethics for Medical Interpreters. This is the main code of ethics taught in most medical interpretation training programs. However, I will be posting a video later where I do compare and contrast in a very brief sense the three main medical interpreting codes of ethics utilized within the United States. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first, ethical principle, according to the NCIHC, is confidentiality. It states, the interpreter treats as confidential within the treating team all information learned in the performance of their professional duties while observing relevant requirements regarding disclosure. So for this, I really tried to go with just memorable images. I actually had this amazing government teacher in high school who gave us this really simple yet really effective presentation on the Bill of Rights. Big reason why I remember the Bill of Rights is because of that presentation. And a big key to that was using really memorable images. And I thought this picture was perfect. The person handing the key to the other person is the doctor, the patients, whoever shares information about the patient with you, the person on the right with their hands outstretched, as a medical interpreter. While we're doing our jobs, we're entrusted with a lot of sensitive information. Not only is it our legal obligation under HIPAA to protect this information, it's also a matter of trust to treat that information as sacred. Even if a patient tells you something outside of the presence of their doctor, it doesn't mean that you go and you tell the doctor. If you learn of a patient's history from one provider at one facility, it doesn't mean that you have the right or the responsibility to divulge that information to another provider at another facility. In some cases, you may be justified in doing this, but generally sensitive medical information should only be shared on a need-to-know basis. You can't assume that everyone knows everything, not even a patient's parent or spouse. Also, there is such a thing as unintentionally breaking confidentiality without even knowing or meaning to. Talking loudly in a public area about a patient, leaving your interpreting notes behind accidentally in a waiting room. These are both ways that I've seen interpreters unintentionally put their patient's privacy at risk. Next up, we have accuracy. This here.
All right. So again, I will leave this. We don't have time to watch it all, but you can watch it. So the point. So if you work like in Boston, there are several big hospitals. If you work at Beth Israel with a patient, and you go to Mass General, and you're interpreting for the same patient, you cannot divulge information you learned about the patient at Beth Israel to the doctor at Brigham or at MGH. Okay? You can't. Right? But if you interpret for a patient, but within the same hospital, all the doctors that look after that patient are part of the healthcare team. So if you work for a patient in infectious disease clinic and you learn something about them, and you go to oncology clinic or you go to the GYN clinic, then the doctor in GYN clinic is part of the treating team for that patient, because it is now at the same hospital. So that in that case, you can divulge that information. Okay? So within the same institution, you can divulge information, but to another institution, you cannot divulge information. Do you understand? Okay. So I will leave this, watch this. If you have any questions, you can ask. And then, so as you see, when you see this, when you watch it, something like this, you see these ones come up, you also should look at them. Okay? You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. So it just gives you more information. Okay? Because she referenced something else she will post later. So introductions. Yeah. So anyway, so this is how that works. So when you listen to something like this and you see something pop up, look into that as well. Okay. So she mentioned, did you hear somebody mention HIPAA?
Yeah.
Okay, what is HIPAA?
Confidentiality.
Yes. So let us take a look at HIPAA. HIPAA. Okay. HIPAA. HIPAA and patient privacy for Medicare. What is HIPAA? The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act is a U.S. law passed in 1996 that protects the privacy and security of patient health information. Why is HIPAA important? It establishes national standards to safeguard protected health information, PHI. It protects patient information from unauthorized access and use. Who does HIPAA apply to? That's what you call covered. There are three categories of people. Covered entities, that is the healthcare providers, like hospitals. Healthcare plans, like your insurance plan. Okay. Business associates. Okay. That is organizations that do business with these providers.
Can you make it bigger?
Sorry, yes, correct.
Can barely see it. All right. Thank you.
Business associates, individuals or organizations that perform certain functions or activities on behalf of the covered entities. For example, if I have an interpreting company and I provide interpreting services for a covered entity such as Beth Israel, then I'm a business associate. Okay, my company is a business associate. So the same standards of confidentiality applies to my company with regards to the patient information that my company has access to on account of working for this healthcare provider. Okay. And the third category of people is workforce members. Okay, so if I'm a staff interpreter that works for MGH, so the same regulations for non-disclosure of PHI applies to me, okay, as well as to the hospital I work for. So what is protected health information? So PHI is any information about the health status, provision of healthcare, or payment for healthcare that is created or collected by a covered entity or business associate and can be linked to a specific individual. So that's the definition of the PHI. Okay, so you need to know this definition. So what are some examples of PHI? Name, address, dates, okay, except year, phone number, fax number, email address, anything that can be used to identify the particular patient. Account number, URL, IP address, full face, photographic images. So there are some situations where if you take a photograph of a patient, as long as their full face is not showing, right? As long as their full face is not showing, okay, or then it's fine. But if the patient has a specific tattoo, right, a specific tattoo that is identifiable, then that is also a protected health information. Anything that can be used to identify that particular patient is protected information. So what are your responsibilities under HIPAA? Treat all patient information as strictly private and confidential. Sorry? Do not share individually identifiable PHI, whether written form, oral, or in electronic form. Okay, and people with access to confidential patient information are required to receive annual HIPAA training. Okay, and your employer would provide the HIPAA training. If you're a contract interpreter, you should be required to get that. It could be required. Okay, so if confidentiality is breached, okay, it can have serious consequences. Oh no, instances where confidentiality can be breached, like an investigation of the US HHS, if you're subpoenaed to testify in court, if there's legitimate research activities. Okay, so violations are serious. Okay, and another aspect of HIPAA is infection control. Okay, so HIPAA focuses on protecting patient privacy and security of PHI. Infection control practices help protect patient privacy by reducing the risk that the patient's PHI could be inadvertently disclosed through exposure to a contagious illness. Okay, so infection control is a part of PHI, protecting health information. Right? So breaches in infection control could potentially lead to privacy violation if that information becomes part of a patient's medical record. So that is PHI. Let's see if we can get any material on PHI. On HIPAA.
Welcome to HIPAA training.
Sorry. I'm going to put these here. This is called so a couple of videos on HIPAA. And then when you watch these ones, some other videos will pop up and you can look at them. So, can someone tell me the 9 codes of ethics for medical interpreters? Actually, give me 2. Each person give me 2.
All right. Confidentiality, accuracy.
All right, that's good. Someone else?
And respect.
Sorry?
Impartiality and cultural sensitivity.
Okay, that's 4. 5 more.
Professionality and respect.
Professionalism and respect. That's 5, 6. 3 more.
Professional development.
Okay. All right.
Respect.
Okay, respect. Oh, nothing.
Cultural.
Sorry?
Cultural.
Okay, cultural sensitivity. Let's look at them again. Okay, advocacy. Actually, we didn't talk about advocacy. Yeah, we talked about advocacy. Yeah. So confidentiality, accuracy, impartiality, cultural sensitivity, professionalism, respect, professional development, advocacy. Okay. And so you have that, and you will have this. Let me see if there's anything else to share here. And of course, there will be a quiz. Code of ethics resource. Questions. There'll be a quiz. So let's look at some quiz items. What is a code of ethics? If you know what that means, list 5. Can list 5. Give one standard. Okay. What does transparency mean? Give one standard of practice. So when we say standard of practice, so this is a, so accuracy is a code. All right. then this now becomes a standard. Let me actually look for standards of practice. Interpreter standards of practice. National standards of practice. So each of these codes has a standard. Okay, so accuracy, these are the standards. Okay, so this is the ethical principle. And these are the standards. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Confidentiality, this is the principle, and these are the standards. Okay. Impartiality, this is the principle, these are the standards. Again, respect, this is the principle, these are the standards. Okay, so let's put that there. Copy link address, and we'll put it here. So these are the standards. These are the standards. This is the principle. Okay, and these are standards. So let's include down here. Let's put it here where it says additional resources. NCIHC standards. Okay, let me put that hyperlink. Okay, so these are standards of practice, okay? All right. So this question that asks, give one standard. So that's the answer. So remember, what are 3 kinds of people we never interpret for? Family member, business associate, and somebody, somewhere else. What are the 3 steps to say no? We didn't talk about this. 4 steps of message analysis. 3 advantages of first person interpreting. So I will give you, before I send this, I'll create information on this before I send this. 3 steps for saying no. 4 steps of message analysis and all that. Okay, so you get this. What other thing? And then you will also get this. What did I just? This one. Do you discuss interpreter sessions with friends, family, or colleagues? So these are ethics questions. Do you provide your phone number to patient or providers? So you get this quiz. And let's see what else. Let's see this one. We already looked at this one. Your family is interested in your work as a medical interpreter. They ask you who you helped today and how it went. What can you tell them? What do you say? Provide answers, reasons for answers. Which part of code of ethics applies? So these are asking you to. So you get these questions. All right. So today we discussed something very important: interpreter codes of ethics. Okay, interpreter codes of ethics. And there will be quizzes tomorrow. I think we should look at anatomy, a bit of anatomy and physiology. Maybe we'll do cardiovascular system, and we'll do a couple of systems. I haven't decided yet which systems we'll do. Okay, or we might do something like infections and the immune system. So the lesson will be recorded, and so anyway, tomorrow we'll go into anatomy and physiology. All right. So have a great evening, and see you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Good to see you, Mary.
Have a good night, everybody.